All right, welcome back to another episode of PT Meal Podcast, a buffet of play, therapies, movement, exercises, activities, and leisure, all packed in a hearty conversation of physical therapy profession and practice. I am Johan de la Paz again, your host. Glad to have you all back here. So today we are going to talk about functional training and what it is and what it's not. Joining us to shed the light on this subject is the current Vice President of the Philippine Association of Manual Physical Therapists, Eugene Octaviano. Eugene, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for this opportunity, Johan. Maganda itong ginagawa mo.
Mhm.
Malaking bagay ito sa mga kapwa nating PT na meron tayong platform na nagiging uh, tool to talk about important things, to
Mhm.
share our thoughts,
Mhm.
ma-share yung kung ano-ano yung mga bagay-bagay sa profession natin. Maganda to, maganda. Salamat sa
Tama.
invitasyon.
Salamat din sa oras. I know you're at work kaya let's cut to the chase. But before we dive into the topic of functional training, bigyan mo muna kami ng introduction on who you are, what's your practice right now para may idea kami kung ano yung experience mo right now.
Okay, sige.
Mhm.
Medyo matagal-tagal na ako nag-graduate sa PT, last
Mhm.
2000 pa. Dahil lang din yan ng encouragement ng mga magulang ko kasi nga yung uncle ko na nasa AIAC dati, pupuntang US.
Mhm.
He's still there until today. Yun ang isang reason bakit ako naging physical therapist. And then eto na nga, I have been into different um, parang career struggles actually when I was starting out. Kasi nung pagkatapos ko mag-graduate, I have a different set of expectations kung anong gagawin ko than to the
Uh-huh.
ones na na-experience ko way back 2000. Ang nangyari, tinigilan ko muna mag-PT, pumunta ko ng sales.
Talaga.
Nag-drip actually ako ng 5 years. And then my
Ah.
profession called me back in.
Mhm.
I started out, pagbalik ko as a physical therapist in a gym.
Mhm.
Yung city gym, ang tawag sa gym na yun dito sa Cebu. And I worked there for 10 years. At saka, hanggang napunta na ako ng Maayo, and I'm the head physical therapist of this facility na nasa Mandaue, still in Cebu. So yun, and then yung focus ng practice ko ngayon is sports at OMPT.
Mhm.
Medyo na-link lang din kasi na exposure ko sa gym and all.
Mhm.
Parang connect lang, nagustuhan ko naman. At saka ito yung functional training specialist. Meron na akong clue sa mga ganun-ganun na yan.
Uh-huh. Right.
Pag-usapan natin kung ano ibig sabihin.
Oo nga, oo nga. Pero parang I think common nga yung yung mga ganyang stories na parang nagpahinga muna from PT tapos parang nabalik na attract ulit sa physical therapy. So, yeah, maganda yung ganong stories. Bago tayo pumunta sa functional training, may event ang Philippine Association of Manual Physical Therapists, PAOMPT, this coming November, right?
November,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah,
It's
talk to us
three.
about that first.
Yes, guys. So to all of those who are tuned in, I'm humbly inviting you to support this effort of PAOMPT, Philippine Association of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists. Ginagawa namin itong international conference kasi nga pandemic pa tayo, hindi pa tayo kaya mag-live, but maganda sana pag live event ito. But then, nonetheless, you'll get so much new things at saka mga updates, kung ano yung mga maganda pag-usapan natin about sa profession natin. We have a really good lineup of speakers, international and local speakers, to shed some light on important things. Team nga namin Game On, OMPT in the 21st century. So it's gonna be happening on the November 7th following weekends, 3 weekends yan, na you'll have chance to be sharing thoughts and ideas with your colleague kasi meron kaming gagawing breakout sessions na hindi lang ito listen in. Yan ang exciting doon. Magkakaroon tayo ng conversations together. May mga breakouts tayo. So, sali kayo. One of the reasons yung isa naming thrust kasi is we're striving for an MO, meaning a member organization of International Federation of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists. So isang malaking bagay yun para sa tawag nito, kakilanlan. Tama ba Tagalog ko?
Tama.
Kakilanlan ng profession natin sa international na na mga counterparts natin. So,
Mhm.
yun ang isa sa mga mabibigat at malalaki naming gustong mangyari sa organization.
Mhm. And this is going to happen kailan ulit? November
November 7, 14, at saka 21st. Tama ba ang dates ko? I
Wow.
don't...
November 3 weeks?
Tatlong weekends,
Tatlong
yes.
weekends? Oh,
Oo.
wow.
So,
Okay.
ang details, you go through the PAOMPT website at saka sa Facebook page.
Mhm.
You'll find the details.
Gotcha. So yeah, check the Facebook page and website of the Philippine Association of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists for all the details for the fifth international virtual conference of the payoff, and the theme is game on. Tapos nandun lahat ng details for registration. All right, so your practice is your background is you started as physical therapist sa gym, as ngayon it's an orthopedic and sports clinic, tama ba?
Tama.
Tama. So I saw some courses na you were part of na naging speaker ka was about functional training, no? So what is functional training? Ano nga ba ito? Ano ba ang tamang pagkakaintindi sa functional training?
Ang daming pwedeng daan paano ko sasagutin kasi yan eh.
Mhm.
I could go with, a marketing perspective ng functional training,
Mhm.
which is I believe, one of the most prominent reason bakit nagkaroon ng ganitong, ang tawag dito, ganitong, ano tawag sa Tagalog? Ganong misconception of functional training. It's actually
Okay.
out of marketing.
Mhm.
I would understand that naming something and communicating something easily to the layperson makes
Mhm.
sense. I believe in that. Ang problema nga lang, medyo nagkukulang tayo ng pagpapaliwanag kung ano ibig sabihin ng itong semantic na to. Kaya doon na medyo nagkakabulahan eh. Minsan
Yeah.
na yun ang nangyayari eh. Nang nagsisimula ako, yung alam ko sa functional training, a training that's done with a specific tool.
Mhm.
Di ba? If ginagawa mo ang training or exercise mo using a specific tool, then it's called functional training.
What do you mean tool? As in exercise equipment?
Is exercise equipment, yes. Sari-saring exercise equipment. Yun ang definition ng functional training. And then as the data progresses or accumulates, malalaman natin na, teka, iba pala, hindi pala yun.
Mhm.
Ngayon kasi, ibang-iba na ang definition ko sa functional training when I was starting out eh.
Mhm.
Minsan sinasabi nila, close kinetic chain exercises ka lang kasi yun ang functional.
Mhm.
Walang open chain. Kasi open chain hindi functional. They could be true on both ends. Ang alam ko ngayon kasi sa functional training, the way I define it today, based on scientific information, is purposeful and functional eh.
Mhm.
So if a training has a purpose to the individual, then it's functional. It doesn't matter what form it is. We could talk about functional in terms of physiologic need, in terms of biomechanical need, in terms of capacity need. Diba? So any form sa katawan natin na kailangan mo para magawa mo kung ano yung mga dapat mong gawin, then it's functional if tinitrain mo siya. Hindi siya defined by a specific movement, hindi siya defined by a specific tool, hindi siya defined by a specific arrangement of exercises, hindi siya defined by a specific choices of exercises, hindi siya defined by a specific program. Kung ang ginagawa mo will make you functional, meaning pwede mong gampanan kung ano yung maximum na kaya mong gampanan ng katawan mo, kung anong bagay ang gagawin mo sa buhay mo, then it's functional. Yun ang definition ko ngayon ng functional kasi may purpose na siya. So kung kunyari ang gusto mong matrain sa katawan mo is explosivity, pero ang ginagawa mo ngayon ay strength, I would label that as functional. Kasi the way I understand, you cannot be powerful if you don't have strength. You don't need to go into plyometrics quickly if hindi pa nakuha yung prerequisite na strength mo to train to plyometrics. So that entire process there is the functional part of the training. Hindi lang yung isang event, hindi lang yung isang exercise, hindi lang yung isang program.
So the whole thing is
that would support for you being able to fully express your movement potential, your movement capacity, or whatever you need to do in life, then that's functional for me. Ganun na ako mag-define ng functional training ngayon. Iba na sa dati.
Okay.
Na dati definition ko, dapat close chain, dapat mga body weight, dapat mga complex movements. They are all part of the functional training.
Okay.
If that will support what you need to achieve in the community or in your life, kumbaga. Whereas, sabihin natin, i-label natin yung exercise like a squat is a functional training exercise. Kung hindi mo yun kailangan, hindi yung functional para sa'yo.
So yung explanation mo is more on, parang, when you say purposeful activity, so it's just like any activity-specific or sport-specific training. So saan pa nila kinuha yung, bakit pa kailangan siyang i-label as functional?
Oh, yun. Minsan kasi, I would understand the need for labeling things. Dahil nasa medical model natin yan eh.
So is it still marketing ano pa rin ba yun? Marketing ano pa rin? Driven?
Some would use that for that purpose. Ang marketing naman kasi is, in another terms, it's communicating. It's a way of communicating something. Hindi naman, ibig sabihin kasi marketing, medyo negative na yun eh. Mayroon nga lang talagang tao na gumagamit ng the way to communicate, pero yung personal agenda nila, yung gustong malagay sa lamesa. But marketing is essentially just communicating. Kasi kung hindi naman, wala namang magmamarket, wala namang magko-communicate kung anong available, wala namang alam ang consumers natin kung saan pupunta. So that's the other side of it, yung other side of the coin. So, minsan kasi, nagiging mabilis. If i-label na lang natin, kunyari, you're in a crowd, it's always easier to call the name of someone you know in the crowd rather than just shouting, hey! So yun ang alam ko ngayon sa functional eh. It becomes a starting point of conversation to bring people in and make them realize, ito pala yung ibang definition ko sa functional. Parang pwede mong gamitin siya na pang, halika, usap tayo sa functional training na yan. Tapos, sasabihan mo na siya kung ano ba talaga functional training. Kasi minsan, if we just look into our consumer's perspective, yung mga pasyente natin, wala naman talaga sila alam sa detalye nito eh. Pero malalaman mo, may maghahanap, Coach, Sir Eugene, pwede ba kami magpa-treat sa iyo ng ganito? Medyo mga specific na kasi may mga names. Ganun, parang ganun yung awareness natin in terms of product consumption. May mga names, may mga tawag nito, may mga brand names, may mga ganyan eh. And even in medicine, kailangan may diagnosis para masundan mo kung anong gagawin. It's going to also be a guide of what you need to do next kasi may diagnosis, may name yung pathology. Diba, mayroong tear, alam, tatayin kung may tear. Impingement, hindi klaro kasi ipit lang, hindi natin alam kung saan ipit. Pero kailangan may name din kasi. Yun, that's how I look at it this way now.
I think nagkakaroon ng ano ba to? Bad reputation ang paggamit ng functional. Kasi makikita mo yung mga videos minsan sa internet na yung client ay or your patient whatever na undergoing functional training, ito yung mga nakatayo pa sa bosu habang nagwe-weights, yung nakatayo sa bosu habang nagba-barbell, nagbubuhat ng barbell, parang nasaan ang functional dyan, saan mo gagamitin yan, diba? Parang masasabing functional, parang saan nila nakuha yung idea na kailangan ganun katindi, ganun ka-complex, ganun karaming action ang functional training kung hindi mo nga siya magamit sa specific function?
Yes, I agree. That's the marketing part na sinasabi ko. Kasi that technique in sales, it's called dramatization of an idea. dinadramatize mo yung gusto mong i-communicate. Because that's where people look. Ambulance dadaan, walang wangwang, hindi matipignan yan.
Oo nga.
Ambulance dumaan, may wangwang, lahat ng tao titingin. So, ganun. Kasi may mga tao ganun na ginagamit sa word na functional eh. It's for marketing's purpose. Sina-hype. Dinadramatize yung idea. It's a sales technique. Medyo familiar ako kasi 5 years nga ako nasa sales eh. So may mga ganyan. Doon tayo nabubulilyaso sa mga ganyang efforts eh. And then people who doesn't know any better would believe so na ganun. So I have personal experiences na itong mga young athletes pupunta rito, Sir Eugene, gusto kong ganito, gusto kong ganyan. Meron ka bang ganitong equipment? Ba't ka na naghahanap ng equipment? Hindi pa natin alam ang problema mo. So, ba kaya yung equipment na yun sa problema mo? Teka lang. Tingnan muna natin, ano bang meron ka? Saan ka ba nagsisimula? Yung parati itong ganitong gino-joke ko eh. Alam nyo guys, kasi pagti-training, para ka lang pupunta ng Quiapo. Ang daming pwedeng sakyan, pero ang magdidictate nun, saan ka manggagaling? Kung nanggagaling ka sa San Juan, punta kang Quiapo, ibang sasakyan mo. Kaysa kung galing kang Galleria. Pero papunta Quiapo pa rin. So yung ganun ko yung nakakausap itong mga young athletes na ba't naghahanap ka na ng ruta ng jeep, specific na ang ruta mo, hindi mo alam kung saan nanggagaling yan. So mahihirapan tayo niyan. So ganun ang nangyayari minsan eh, kasi dito sa mga marketing na mga efforts ito nga ginagamit yung functional na word.
Naha-hype masyado yung kliyente or yung patient about naisip nila the more complex the exercise is, the better it is. Parang hindi nila nagigets talaga agad kung ano yung dapat for them that really would say that it's the exercise or the approach is functional.
Yan ang inherent challenge natin sa consumer minds ng mga ang tawag nito ng mga patronizers ng services natin, and it's our job or it's our responsibility as the professionals to communicate the right thing. Ang problema, hindi natin kayang i-communicate in one whole blast yung ganun kasi nga limited din kasi magagawa natin the best is pag mayroon na andyan na nasa harap na educate na din para yun na malalaman na nila eh. Pero talagang malulula ka sa dami ng misinformation pupunta sa iyo. Ganito na hinahanap.
Is it our job as physical therapists to combat this misinformation, or is it the part of the fitness and exercise industry sila na dapat ang mag-correct nito?
Mahirap na tanong yan. Sagutin actually.
Kasi dalawang industry siya eh.
Ang pwede natin kasing sabihin dyan eh, are we talking about idealistic ways or are we gonna talk about practical means? We can control our actions, not someone else's. So if I would have to answer you practically, I would say yes, atin yan. Control natin ang atin eh. Hindi natin magkukontrol sa kanila eh. Diba? But we could also become idealistic with this. We could have a forum with them. Diba? Easier said than done. Napag-usapan natin, ganun tayo mag-communicate eh, di ba? So actually, itong ginagawa ko dito sa Cebu eh. I'm working with personal trainers. Maliit lang naman ang community dito ng mga trainers at saka mga PT. One reason probably na medyo madali sa akin kasi I came from that environment. Kumbaga ba, I've seen both sides of the fence. 10 years ako doon sa kabila, doon akong trabaho ko. I know people from that side of the fence. Kumabilang bakod ako ngayon. So parang baka ganun eh. Medyo, so I talk to some trainers dito sa Cebu na they would refer to me patients na they find complicated. I would do some assessment. I'll give it them back to them. Sasabihin ko sila, okay yan, gawin mong program mo. Sabi ng patient mo, itong program mo, wag lang gawin ito. Eh, tuloy sila doon. So meron ako mga relationship na ganyan dito. It could be done. Na yung buong community, the fitness trainers and the PTs, gonna be communicating the same thing. Dapat may catalyst lang na will be using the same language. Ang problema, magkaiba tayong language eh. Parang tayo, mag-usap tayo, mag-Bisaya ako, mag-Tagalog kayo, hindi tayo magkaintindihan. Parang ganun.
So kailangan we're on the same page sa ating mga pinagagagawa. Going to, let's think about the true approach of functional training. Paano naman natin may i-adapt yung functional approach when we see a patient for the first time in their like evaluation or assessment? Is that like, would that apply to to assessment, or does the functional part only come into the intervention?
Ay mulat sa sapul.
Mm-hmm.
Dapat na meron ka ng ganong idea eh.
Mm-hmm.
Perspective na yan. Yung functional training is more of a perspective rather than a specific technique.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I believe yun ang definition ko ngayon eh.
Mm-hmm.
Para ano lang, yun nga sabi ko kanina, I want to know where you're coming from so I could direct you to the right route where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, magsimula sa assessment yun. Ano bang mga kaya mong gawin? Itong philosophy ko is medyo, disclaimer na to siya, medyo heavy influence na to ng functional movement systems eh, because they're talking about it. Ganun ang logic nila na we have to really see people how they move. Kasi logical lang naman eh. Do you have pain with your movements? Do you feel restrictions with your movements? Do you feel that you control most of your ranges? This is becoming specific na in the functional language. Kumbaga, yun na muna. Can you express your range of motion? Yung available mo dapat. All right? If you can express that, can you control it? If you can control it, can you use it with high demands? So yun ang mga questions ko sa patient ko ngayon. O teka, ang gusto mong goal is moving with high demands. Do you have the two prerequisites? Can you express it first? If you can express it, you have no business going to loading that movement or that range of motion. Eh parang hindi pa marunong maglakad yung bata, pinatakbo mo na, parang ganun eh. Gagapa pa nga lang siya, pinatakbo mo na, parang ganun nangyayari minsan eh. Nag-workout na ng may mga weights, eh, hindi nga kayang mag-extend ng hip pala na siya lang mag-isa. Paano niya gagawin yun dun sa may load? May mga ganun. They might not get injured immediately, but alam natin na pwedeng magkaroon ng problema down the line. Kasi talagang pwede nilang i-push kung ano yung gusto nilang mangyari in terms of the demands, kung ano yung activities na yun, disregarding yung inherent limitation na pwede namang makita early on. So parang kung sisimula sa ganyan, and then from that, kung ano ang fundamental na kulang sa'yo, doon natin pupunan. So may mga prerequisites, parang hindi ka pwedeng mag-anatomy 2 kung wala kang anatomy 1. Hindi ka pwedeng mag-clinics kung wala kang PT1. Parang gano'n ang approach sa training ko. Hahanapan kita ng prerequisite muna. Pag kuha mo yung prerequisite mo, bibigay ko sa iyo kung anong gusto mo. Pag hindi, eto muna. Non-negotiable ito. Dito ka muna.
So ano talaga siya? Parang compartmentalize siya. Hindi ka mag-move on to one. So wala siyang overlap?
Hindi naman kasi siya strictly linear eh, na kunyari, let's say, dalawang movements. Yung isa, you could express the range of motion. Yung isang movement, hindi. Itong isang movement na to, ito lang hindi ko ilo-load.
Okay.
Pero itong movement na kaya mong express, pwede ka mag-load dito. Pero while monitoring, kung may impact dito sa isang hindi mo pwedeng i-load.
Okay.
If the other movement is degrading because you're loading here, eh mag-iiba ako dito kasi gusto ko magsabay siya. Sabay siyang tutubo sa physical training mo. Pag hindi kasi nakakasabay, nagiging problema. Ang dami na kasing research about alteration of motor control due to pain, due to whatever. Marami ng data about interregional dependence na pag may problema ka sa isang region, nakakaproblema sa kabila. Ang dami ng data na ganyan eh. Hindi naman natin pwedeng sabihin na wala i-disregard natin. Hanapin mo lang dyan sa PubMed. Andyan, ang dami. Mayroong sense na ganito ka mag-isip. Na hindi porket ito lang yung demand ng sport niya, yan lang specific na movement na iti-training mo. Your body will grow strong in that direction. Eh, paano kung in your other aspects sa life mo, na-expose ka sa ibang direction na hindi ka malakas, doon ka na-injured, hindi sa sport mo. Kapag sa sport mo, parang gano'n, di ba?
Oo nga. May ganyan akong kaibigan na his sport was weightlifting, parang sport, the hobby. It was weightlifting. Na-injure siya sa volleyball.
O, di ba? Kasi nga, yung physical training mo, unilateral, homogeneous. Tama naman,
Oo.
lalakas ka talaga dyan.
Oo.
Specific training, nagiging biktima tayo dun eh.
Mhm.
Tama naman kasi, it's true. Kung wala ka nang ibang gagawin.
Oo, oo.
Eh kung gusto mo sumali ng mga ganyang volleyball, yung katawan mo hindi naman adapted dyan. Hindi ang function mo is not deemed functional to do volleyball. Patay ka dyan.
Exactly.
Ka doon, lagot. Eh
Oo.
patay yung isang sport mo. Isang lang naman ang tuhod mo eh.
Oo nga.
Isa lang ang tuhod mo na gagamitin mo mag-weightlifting, isa lang ang tuhod mo na gagamitin mo mag-volleyball. Eh ba't
Ayan.
hindi mo ito ng dalawa? Dalawa ang gusto mong gawin eh.
Ayan, na ACL injury siya sa volleyball. Hindi siya nakapag-weight.
Di ba? So in that sense, if he's doing training for volleyball, then it's become functional for his sport.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's gonna protect him to keep doing what he loves to do, competing in weightlifting. Pero he's preparing him. Meron nga iba, nag-walk lang ng dog eh. Hindi man
Na-injure?
sport yun.
Ay,
Na-injured,
nag-is.
nag-walk lang ng dog. Natigil yung triathlon. Ayaw ko mag-train ng rotation coach kasi yung bike naman ako eh. Nakaganon lang ako mag-bike eh. Huwag mo nang i-walk ang dog mo. Pag tumakbo yan, tapos naikot ka, hindi ka marunong maghandol ng ikot eh. Oh, magagawin mo yan, na-strain ng back, makapag-bike, hindi na.
Sorry. Medyo natuwa ako sa na-injure sa pag-walk ng dogs.
Oo. Kasi may hinabol na pusa. Eh, mahilig pa naman mag-Rottweiler, yung mga Maltese na ganyan, ang lalakas niya.
Matapang yun.
So, ay, nangyari sa'yo. Hindi ka
So,
makabike ngayon.
ang sagot ba sa ganon ay, tawag dito, ay cross-training? Isa bang sagot yun?
We could label that as cross-training. Or we could just say, you better be prepared with all your planes of motion kahit anong ginagawa mo. Kahit may sport kang ganito na it's primarily in a sagittal plane, isa lang din ang katawan mo nagagawa ng rotational plane kahit magbuhat ka lang ng mineral water sa pwede kang ma-injure dun eh.
Okay.
So meaning, let's train people on the level of the species. Not just on which activity they want to go.
Mhm.
Diba? Kasi kung ang katawan mo, buong katawan mo, i-adapted in all its potential, kahit saan ka ilagay na environment, you will thrive. Kasi ang katawan mo yung prepare mo eh. Hindi yung specific activity lang eh. Medyo selective na yun eh. Okay lang kung paggising mo, magbabike ka na. Yan din ang kinikwento ko sa etong mga weekend warriors natin, di ba? 8 to 10 hours sa office, 5-7 days a week sa office, naka-flex yung hip, naka-slouch, biglang tatakbo. Extremes of positions ang kailangan. Pag hindi ka nag-train how to transition from the flex to extended, magpo-problema ka talaga sa extended. Pag nagka-problema ka sa extended, magpo-problema ka na ngayon sa flex. Kasi nakikita natin ng training, black and white lang eh. Eh, ang totoo, gray areas lahat yan. Naka-overlap lahat yan. So, instead of focusing kung anong exercise for a specific sport, ano ba kailangan ng katawan mo ngayon? Mas gusto ko dun tayo mag-usap.
Okay.
Tapos imamatch ko yung katawan mo dun sa sport na gusto mong gawin. O dun sa activity na gusto mong mag-strive. Kasi baliktad kung eto na, tapos, di ba? Ang dami, mabilis. Mabilis makita. Anong magandang exercise para sa basketball? Lahat ng mga jumps kasi magda-jump, magda-dunk eh. But are you designed to jump in the first place? Baka hindi. Hindi natin alam. Kasi hindi natin tinitignan eh.
So how do you balance that na a person would want to exercise in a activity specific or sport specific na exercise or goal, then what you're mentioning earlier na kailangan in other aspects of your function na hindi lang naman yun ng activity mo, di ba? So how do you balance that? Na ito yung goal niya pero gusto mo rin naman siyang maging as a whole person na hindi lang specific to that activity.
You mean paano natin i-communicate yan sa patients?
Like for example, gusto niya, gusto kong gumaling sa basketball. Diba? Pero sinasabi natin kanina na hindi lang naman ang basketball ang buhay mo. Gusto mo naman makaiwas sa injury in other aspects of your life and participate in other activities. So how do you balance that? That activity, sport-specific goal of that patient and that whole person?
So ang actually, pag specific na ganyan ang sport niya, gusto kong maging magaling as specific skills sa sport, I'm gonna directly talk to them about the prerequisites nung activity na yon. Now, so kung nahihirapan silang gumawa ng highly dynamic na movement, i-challenge ko sila ngayon into a medyo controlled, safe na movement na challenge. So sabihin ko sa kanila, ito ang prerequisite niyan. Pag covered mo ito, ibig sabihin, kulang ka lang ng training dun sa area na yon ng dynamic, whatever. Pero pag hindi mo to covered ngayon, na controlled na movement na to, baka ito yung rason bakit hindi ka nagtatrive dun sa mga training ng mga dynamic na exercises. For example, nahirapan kang tumakbo. Ano bang kulang mo sa'yo? Yung capacity ba? Work capacity? Yung heart fitness mo ba? Bakit nahirapan kang tumakbo? O yung biomechanical, di mo siyang takbo, hindi kaya suportahan ang katawan mo? O yung mga muscles mo, walang endurance or walang strength to do that. How would we know? Ganun ako magkipag-usap sa kanila. So mag-iisip sila ngayon, nga, paano natin malalaman yan, coach? Gagawin natin ng test isa-isa. O i-test natin fitness capacity mo. Okay, fitness capacity mo. Meron naman tayong mga test para sa ganyan The step test, the treadmill test. Kung gusto natin isipet mo na. Yung biomechanical assessment, tingnan natin yung mga range of motion mo sa katawan mo. Movement test tayo. Hindi mo covered yung ankle dorsiflexion mo. Medyo mahirap. Mararamdaman niya, nga, medyo mahirap, coach. Baka yan ang nagiging rason bakit hindi ka makag-strive dun sa running mo. Solve natin muna to. Di ba? So, ganun ang conversation pagdating sa ganyan. It's directly linking to what they want to do, pero binabacktrack ko dun sa anong fundamental requirements nito muna. Kasi hindi nila intindi. It's our job to make them understand na mayroon palang requirement ito, coach. Kasi tingnan mo, hindi mo nga ma-bend ang ankle mo ng dorsiflexion na close kinetic chain di ba kailangan to dun? So ano nga, tatakbo tayo o eto ang gagawin natin? Subukan natin ito muna. Mas madali ito, di ba? Tapos pag nag-change yan, mag-iiba naman ng performance niya doon sa takbo. Maintindihan na nila, yung pala sinasabi ni coach.
I see.
So it doesn't necessarily nai-relate to talaga sa ibang life nila. It was more of a, parang mga examples lang natin yun na yun ang truth May nagkakaroon ka ng disgrasya kasi homogeneous ang training mo is really specific to the sport na nakakalimutan mo yung ibang movement environments mo na pwede kang hindi ka prepared doon.
I see. Like for example, pag sinabi mong gusto tumakbo ng mabilis, takbo ka lang ng takbo. Yun lang ginagawa mo.
Kasi specific of training daw
Oo nga
Totoo naman, yung matayang na wrong yun. Medyo na-focus lang masyado doon, hindi na natin natingnan na, teka, baka may ibang problema. Mabilis, yung profession kasi natin na when I was growing up, sinasabi ko when I was growing up in this profession, mabilis tayo yung, tama naman kasi magkaroon ng cause and effect. Ang problema nga lang, it's not as straightforward as it is as we might want it to happen. Kasi dati, ang alam ko ito, may low back pain, tight hamstring yan. Stretching na tayo. Yung paa niya, malapit niyang ma-split, ang low back pain, andun pa rin. Talaga yun, ibig sabihin na wala na sana ang low back pain, may tayo sa buhay. May Trendelenburg, weak glute yan. Nakalimutan natin yung adductor, may role. Yung kabilang QL may role. Pero weak adductor lang ang lini-label natin, kaya may Trendelenburg. Isa lang na rason yun. Paano iba? Na-check natin. Hindi natin alam. Tayo natatrap sa mga ganyan na gusto natin 1 + 1 = 2 agad
nakakalimutan natin we're dealing with the person.
Calculus yung course natin Ang daming dadaanan.
Hindi siya eksakto. Tama. Dun sa when I'm reading ng functional, preparing for this conversation, may minabasa ko na parang fundamental movements that are functional, like push, pull, squat, lunge, hinge rotation, and walking. Are we saying na dapat yung mga elements na ay nandun, or it's really, it depends on what the purpose of the movement is?
Ayun, depende sa purpose talaga. Yun ang pinaka madali kong isasagot, depende sa purpose. Pero totoo. Kasi yung mga movements na yan, the way they are described, ito yun eh, this is how I understand these things. When we physical therapists describe exercises, it's based on planar range of motion. Shoulder flexion, shoulder extension exercise, blah, blah, blah. But in the fitness training, we need to describe the exercise na relatable ng layperson. Diba? So, a simultaneous shoulder extension and elbow flexion is a pull. It's a pulling movement because it's simultaneous flexion and extension ng shoulder. Sa atin lang natin, yun ang description natin, di ba? Flexion, extension. But in the layman's mind, it's a pull. Doon ang galing yung pull, push, hinge. It's to communicate to the layperson. Ang problema ngayon, tayo as professionals, we forget about, teka, professional pala ako, may alam pala ako sa anatomy and all. So I should look at the push-pull in terms of biomechanics kung kailangan kong tingnan in terms of biomechanics. Di ba? Pero ginagamit na natin yung push-pull. Design natin na exercise, gano'n na, push-pull. Kasi yun ang function. Nakakalimutan natin na PT pala tayo. Ginagamit na natin yun. May purpose ng language na yun eh. It's to communicate to the people who doesn't have our own language to understand these are your exercises. These are the names of the shapes and forms that you should be in to say that you've covered. Kasi yun na yun eh. Lahat tayo, kaya yun gawin dapat. Di ba? Kaya nagiging topic siya na yung mga movements na yun ay andun sa listahan na yun. Kasi everybody has those inherently. Kumbaga, yun na ang puhunan mo eh. One of the movements there could degrade because of whatever reason. Preference of exercise, preference of activity, an injury, anatomical aberration, whatever. Pero lahat tayo, fundamental yun eh. Lahat ng bata, kung tignan mo, will display that expression of range of motion, will display that shape and form. Magkucrawl yan, magpupush yan ng toy, magpupull yan ng whatever. Mula pagkabata, ibig sabihin atin yun, binigay sa atin yun. Those are our resources. Yun ang capital natin. Ingatan natin yun, hindi mawala lahat. Mawawala yun kasi meron ka ng mga preferences. So we just need to get back to that para buo ka ulit. Nice. So kung kailan mo ibabalik yun, pwede mo nang i-schedule na priority ko muna yung hinge kasi majority ng activities ko, mag-i-hinge talaga ako. Unahin ko na itong ibalik. Unahin ko nang makontrol ito. Kasi ito yung demand ng trabaho ko, mag-i-hinge talaga ako. Kumpara doon sa magpupush or magpupull. Yung kailangan kong pa-priority, kasi yung oras natin 24 hours lang eh. Di mo pwedeng train lahat yun.
Right.
So magkakaroon ka ng prioritization. Ano bang pattern ang unahin ko dito? Ano bang mas importante sa kanya ngayon? Ano bang mas magmamatter sa kanya ngayon? Ito nang unahin ko. But I'm not saying ito lang tatrabahuin ko. Ito lang una ngayon. Siya muna.
How big is the participation of the patient in the rehab of that, functional mindset and approach?
Dapat sa kanya lahat yun. Kung ako na magsasabi, yun yan. Tutulungan lang kita i-figure out anong dapat mong gawin. Kasi pag isasandal mo sa akin, magli-live-in tayo. Diba?
Sasama ka sa bahay niya.
Oras mo, ikaw, alam mo katawan mo eh. So my job in the patient's mind is to help you figure out what you can't figure out. But once we figure it out, you do your due diligence. Ikaw nang gagawa. Pag medyo may shaky road, may roadblock, tawag ka sa akin. Tingnan natin, pag-usapan natin, ito na nangyayari sa'yo, change mo na. Ganito ka na. So, I'm just in the background, directing you where you want to go. Ikaw talaga pupunta dun.
Have you experienced na may konting resistance yung patients or yung clients mo on that kind of approach? And how do you handle that?
Meron talaga if we communicate in a wrong way. Pag hindi tama ang initial na conversation nyo, hindi tamang initial communication mo, magre-resist talaga. People come to us with their own beliefs and perspectives na eh. Kasi andyan na internet, nagbabasa na yan, meron na mga idea yan. So ang solution ko dyan is ginagamit ko na yung sales training ko. Makikipag-converse ako sa iyo. And then I will put challenges on what you believe in. If may kulang ka, aantayin kong itanong mo sa akin kung ano yung kulang na yun, isusupply ko sa iyo. I don't give out answers without a question. Ganun ako magipag-usap sa mga kliyente o sa mga pasyente. Kasi ang nangyayari parang ganito eh. Dok, masakit ang shoulder ko. Hindi man lang ka tinignan, nagsulat ng reseta. O yating inumin mo. Inom ka ba? Hindi eh. Parang madududa ka. So, when they come to me, Coach, masakit yung likod ko. I don't say, baka slip disc yan. Baka, no. That's too early to say. Sabi ko, ano pa? Okay, bakit? Anong nangyari? Okay, kwentahan mo pa ako. Okay. Tapos. Ganun lang ako eh. Pag nakuha ko ng complete picture, subukan natin to. Baka maintindihan natin. Ganito ako makipag-usap eh. Tayo. Subukan natin to. Baka maintindihan natin kung anong nangyayari sa'yo. O, tingnan mo ganito. Okay, sa nakikita ko, ganito siya. Eto yan. Tingnan mo kaya. Gagalawin ko to ha. Gagalawin ko to. Magmamanual kunyari ako. Gagalawin ko to. Nag-iba ba? Anong nangyari? Anong epekto? Oo nga, coach. Parang gumaan. O, tutuloy natin yan sa treatment natin. Pero mahirap ko ako lang parating gagawa. Bigyan kitang exercise paano gawin niya sa bahay. Para ikaw nang gumawa. Para pagbalik mo sa akin, hindi na yun ang gagawin natin kasi sayang naman ang pera mo. Pero kung gusto mo kong bayaran para gawin ang same thing, okay lang sa akin. Exactly my script. Exactly the way I communicate to
Ganon pala.
Ganon talaga ako makipag-usap. Sabi, okay lang naman. Pero kung gusto mo lang akong bayaran para gawin mong warm up para sa'yo, okay lang sa akin. Pero sayang naman. Oo nga, coach. Sige na. Ako na magwa-warm up, coach. Communication kasi, doon tayo na nawawala. Kasi experts na tayo. Tama naman, experts tayo. But it doesn't mean we should force to our patient's mouth kung ano yung expert opinion natin. We don't give it out if it's uncalled for. Pag hindi itinanong, wag mong ibigay.
Maganda yan.
So give them enough information to create questions in their mind, and then when they ask the question, sabi na, okay, so you're ready to listen. Sabihin ko na sa'yo.
That's a good technique. That's a good advice. Kasi I think sometimes nandun tayo sa IPT ako, nag-aral ako, sundin mo ako, ito yung alam ko. Parang ganun ang ano eh. Minsan hindi naman na-receive eh.
One of the biggest obstacle that I see why we fail at communication, that expert bubble. Masyado tayong expert. Masyado na tayong matalino. Nagdidebate tayo sa isa't isa sa mga katalinuhan natin. Nakakalimutan natin kaya paintindihin ng pasyente natin. Hindi natin mapag-cooperate sa mga methods natin. Kasi masyado tayong expert.
Right.
Snob na tayo sa utak ng mga pasyente natin.
That's a good point. To wrap everything up, anong functional approach or mindset that a physical therapist should employ?
All right. Simply lang. Let's look at our patients' inherent capacities, inherent biomechanical things. Mag-i-specific na lang ako ng example kasi principle it's supposed to be broad, but to get the message across, let's a little bit be tailored that to a little bit more specific. Kung sa trabaho natin, the way I approach things is ito, kaya meron ka mga range of motion na available sa katawan mo, lahat yan, nagagalaw mo yan. Pag ginagalaw mo ba yan, may problema ba? Anong problema? May sumasakit ba o kaya medyo may pigil? Pag pigil, may problema. Pag may masakit, mas lalong may problema. Tignan natin lahat ng pwedeng tignan sa katawan mo, bakit nagiging gano'n ang problema? Hindi lang yung isa, buo, yung shoulder lang o yung knee lang. Kasi magkakaroon ng relate lahat yan eh. Tingnan ng buong pasyente. Pagkatapos niyan, let them experience what you think you need to teach them. Wag mong sabihin. So the basic language there is move. Let them move into those challenge position. Let them move into those challenge ranges so they would feel na, you bring it to their awareness first. Kasi pag hindi sila aware na may problema doon, hindi makikinig talaga sa iyo sa solusyon. Now, when they get to experience that limitation, ask them, how do you think you could change that? If they know how to do it, make them do it. If it will not change, then ask them, are you ready for me to teach you how to do it? Now, if kaya nilang gawin mo ng assignment yan. May HEP ka na.
Okay.
Simplihan lang.
It sounds easy. Parang andaling, nung pagkakasabi parang andaling gawin. Pero parang, I think it would take practice para ma-practice talaga sa mga pasyente.
Actually, yung ano ko diyan, yung foundations ko diyan is being gagamit naman ako ng word functional assessment. I went deep into functional tests and functional assessments. Kasi the way we could communicate the movement to some people is by feel eh. Hindi mo pwedeng i-communicate by talk. Kasi example, from the personal training days ko, alam ko paano i-cue exercise correctly verbally. Alright, ganito, we'll perform a row. You hold the barbell on in front of your hip, shoulder width apart, mga ganyan di ba? Alam natin i-cue verbally. Pero the patient is not feeling exactly what you meant with those verbal cues. So mas maigi kung iti-teach natin na nafe-feel nila. One example, nung personal training days ko, leg raises. Di ba yung leg raises is supposed to be an ab workout? Yung nakahiga tapos inaangat yung paa. It's supposed to be a lower abs workout in the fitness language. I have clients na nagpa-perform noon, they look correct from the outside. Tama naman ang alignment, tama naman, correct naman. Tapos titigil. Coach Eugene, ayaw ko na kasi masakit. Yung yung tiyan, hindi yung likod ko. Bakit iba? Bakit iba? So I missed something. They look correct, tama ang instructions ko, but internally they were not feeling it correctly. I have to intercede. I have to make changes. I have to do an intervention para mag-iba. People learn by feel. Pag-exercise sa movement ang pinag-iusapan natin. Hindi pwedeng usap-usap lang. Podcast pwede siguro usap-usap. Pag-exercise parang hindi. Mahirap.
Ang ganda nun Ang ganda nung sinabi mo, people learn by feeling. Ma-adapt ko yan sa aking practice.
Ay, hindi original sa akin yun. Galing yung sa mentors ko.
Talaga. Pero maganda siyang ma-pass on.
Movement is in the language of, movement is learned in the language of feel. Galing kay Gray Cook.
Nino?
Si Gray Cook.
Well, that's nice. Okay. Babaunin ko yan sa work ko next week. Okay, so thank you again for being in the podcast. Ang dami ko natutunan, ang dami ko realization sa ating casual conversation na to about what functional training is and what really is and not. Tapos about movement, and that kind of approach. And invite natin sa ulit for your the upcoming international conference.
Yes, thank you rin sa pag-invite mo sa akin for this opportunity so I could communicate to your listeners na meron kaming conference, 5th International Conference happening this November. Go to PAOMPT FB page and website to get more details and information. Join us in this efforts of raising the OMPT practice to an international recognition.
Maganda yun kasi, di ba? Yeah, thank you for coming here. Tama ba na like if you gain international recognition, the credentials of being an OMPT is applicable to the other member organizations dun sa IFOMP, right? That's the goal, right?
Yes.
Nice. That's a good one. Para isang recognition lang and magandang strive yan as a goal. All right. Hindi muna kita pakakawalan. I have my last bites of questions. Hindi na siya about functional training. So the questions. Parang ganun. Hindi. Alright. Yung una kong question is kung ulam ka, if you're a dish, what type of dish would you be?
Pakbet.
Pakbet. Bakit pakbet?
Maraming klase na mga importante at healthy.
Healthy. Very vegetarian yun, di ba? Puro gulay yun, di ba? Pakbet.
Hindi flashy, pero may laman. Pakbet. Mabilis makita. Andyan lang.
Gotcha. All right, pakbet. My second question is, what is your recipe for success?
Recipe for success? Ay naku, buksan lang ang mata, lawakan ang isip, at takom ang bibig.
Buksan ng mata, lawakan ng isip at takom na bibig.
Yes.
Okay.
Listen lang. Listen.
Good. And my third question is, what are the 3 ingredients that are essential in your life? It can be a motto, a principle, a value that you live by. The 3 ingredients that make up Eugene Octaviano.
Una sa akin serbisyong totoo lang.
Plugging,
serbisyong totoo lang.
Serbisyong totoo lang.
Tsaka tulong lang talaga. Be genuinely interested in helping other people. And then nourish, nourish and then cultivate the relationships that you build along the way.
That's good. Servisyo totoo, genuine help to others, and nourish and cultivate relationship with others. That's good. All right. If there's one thing that we want our audience to take away, yung pabaon natin sa mga nakikinig sa atin from this episode, ano yun?
Gagamitin ko na lang yung famous na parang quote. It's not what we don't know that will hurt us. It's what we know for sure that isn't so.
Pakiulit nga.
It's not what we don't know that will hurt us. What we know for sure that isn't so.
Medyo
tayo
deep.
Nagbabangayan.
Ang deep,
tayo nagbabangayan kasi I know for sure ito yan. Nagbangayan ka sa iba. They know for sure ayun yun. Yun na, conflict na. Pero sa totoo lang, yun ang mag-hurt sa atin. Kasi alam mong ito, pero hindi pala. Minsan nahihiya tayo umamin na hindi ko yan alam, bro. Kapiti, tulungan mo ako, hindi ko to alam eh. Complicated ang case para sa akin, nahihiya tayo. Nasa expert bubble tayo eh, dapat alam natin lahat. When in fact, hindi naman talaga. Imposible alaman mo lahat. Nawawala yun eh. So nahihiya tayo na wala tayong alam. Wag, hindi tayo mag-grow kung parati tayo hilang wala. Wala nga akong alam hanggang ngayon eh.
Meron sila kasabihan sa ganyan, 'di ba? Na parang mas yung mga tao na perceive na wala silang alam, sila pa yung mas may alam.
Bakit yun ang ibig mo sabihin, 'di ba?
Ay, hindi ko para isa yon, pero meron din talaga quote na ganun eh. I forgot it. Pero yun nga, I mean yung pang kasi we shouldn't stop learning, and you have to realize na ang dami-daming information sa mundo na hindi mo talaga malalaman lahat eh. The moment na naniwala ka sa sarili mo na alam mo na lahat, wala na. Mali ka na doon. Tapos ka na doon. Dami-dami ko nakuhang nuggets of wisdom dito sa conversation na to.
Ganun ba? Totoo yan?
Oo, totoo. Babaunin ko especially yung we learn from moving sa aking practice. Kasi sa practice ko, minsan hindi nagka-come across yung verbal communication eh. So I think the movement part, letting them experience it, would be more powerful impact on it, or feedback for them. So yeah.
So para na lang sa listeners mo, pag curious sila paano ginagawa yun, you explore lang lahat ng saan kayo. Kasi magkakaroon ako ng shameless plug for FMS system eh. Ayaw kong i-plug kasi hindi lang naman sila ang may ganun eh. But doon ako nagsimula.
Mhm,
Yun ang
mhm,
pinaka-biggest na learning ko. Ba't na ako napunta sa movement perspective?
mhm,
Ah, ano lang, may mga test kasi na ikaw yung gagawa. You would understand why the biomechanics is behaving that way by your field. But
mhm,
that field also develops over time. Hindi naman automatic first grade ka pag nagganon ka, alam mo na yung mga R1, P1, P2, P1, alam, hindi man na lahat eh. Aralin mo pa yun by experience. So, minsan kasi pag may mga movement test ka na ipagagawa sa patient, na the basic logic about movement test is to create restrictions so hindi mangyayari lahat ng potential compensation nila to favor them in those movements. Pag tinanggal mo yun in how you make people do some movement as a test, mararamdaman nila na, hey, hindi ko pala kaya. Akala ko, coach, kaya ko, coach. Hindi
mhm,
pala. Oh, kita naman eh. Di ba?
mhm, mhm,
Ramdaman mo naman eh.
mhm,
That communication, tapos takom ang bibig mo nun eh. Pinagawa mo sa kanila.
mhm.
Naramdaman nila, na-realize nila, coach, paano to? Anong gagawin dito? Ngayon, ready ka na. It's
Jedi
very,
mind trick.
parang gano'n lang eh.
Mhm. Na-try ko nga yun eh, FMS. Yun yung may dowel, tapos yung
Mm.
mag-reach ka ng hand of yung
Mm.
knee. Sabi ko, ang hirap naman ito. So yeah, na-discover ko na ang dami kong restrictions.
Oh, may mga ganyan na mga test. It's not
Mm,
limited to to that group. Merong iba, but the logic there nagugustuhan ko is yung pinagagawa mo sa kanila, hindi they automatically recognize na may deficiency. Hindi mo pa sinasabi may deficiency.
mhm,
Yun ang maganda. Ang
mhm,
sarap ng feeling nun. Kaya
mhm.
pag binibigay ka ng solusyon ngayon, all ears na sila.
Okay. Again, thank you very much for your time, for sharing your knowledge about functional training and inviting us to the International Conference of the Philippine Association of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists.
All right, thank you.